to show you how you can have compost inside your home without having a garden. I'm Danny DeSilves and I'm the founder of Leafeco.co.uk. In today's video we're going to make a DIY wormery that you can keep inside your home. You need a container to keep the worms in, a drill to drill some air holes in the container, some compost in terms of making the worms an awesome structure of bedding, some water in a spray bottle, some food for the worms to eat, and most importantly you need your worms, and these guys are here in this little box. So the first thing we need to talk about is the actual container of where you are going to keep your worms. Go for something which is dark. Obviously this is going to let the light in and the worms hate the light. I'm going to keep this in a cupboard which I rarely use, which is the one under my sink, and it's not too hot, it's not too cold, it's pitch black in there, it'll be perfect for the worms. So don't feel you have to go out and buy lots of awesome shaped containers for the worms. Use what you have around the home, try and upcycle something. Things that you can use for your wormery: a celebrations tub, any general container. This is just an old protein tub that I store sewing bits and bobs in. So the size of the container will depend on the room that you actually have and where you're going to be keeping the worms. So I'm using 2 containers. It works out better the more containers you have, and I'll explain that in just a second. If you only have the 1 container, don't worry, you can still make your own wormery. The benefit behind having the 2 containers just means you can harvest off the worm castings or the liquid fertiliser a little bit easily. So the plan is I'm going to drill a couple of holes at the bottom of here, and this bottom section is going to collect the liquid fertiliser. Now the liquid fertiliser is highly organic matter. When I use this in my garden, I want to dilute it to 1 part worm liquid to 10 parts water, just so I'm not scorching the plants by putting it straight on. And the top bit is where the worms are going to be living, and also where the bedding's going to be, and all this lovely food stuff. The more room you have, the more space the worms can accommodate in, and potentially make you more worm castings. My worms costed me, I think, about £3 to £4. I will post the exact link in the description bar so you guys can check them out. There's 2 types of worms in here. I'm be very, very careful because I don't want to disrupt these little guys in here. So I've got 25 grams of worms in here, which doesn't sound like a lot, but this is only a small space. Eventually, if you do have the right living conditions, the worms will multiply. So even if you do settle on the smallest pack of worms to start off with, eventually they are going to multiply and you are going to have lots of worms. So keep that in mind. If you have a small space, you could get to the point where you have lots of worms. If that happens, you want to make yourself another worm bin, or possibly even give them to someone as a gift if you have people that would appreciate worms as a gift. As you can see down here, just where the top container doesn't quite meet the bottom, there is a gap here. So what I'm going to do is I want to extend that gap there, and it's a really, really simple process. There's these little lips just here, like that. So when they slot together, it adds a nice tight fit. In order to make this gap at the bottom a bit bigger, and again use whatever materials you have around you, your container will look a little bit different to this, so really be creative as much as you can. Where the slots come out, all I'm going to do is take 2 normal garden pegs. I'm going to slot 1 down here, and then on the opposite side at the top I'm going to do another one. So there we have it. So right at the bottom there, that gap's been extended. So it's going to look like this when the lid is on. I'm going to drill some holes in here so the worms can breathe, and also I'm going to drill just a couple down here as well around the whole outside of this box so that the worms have a bit more air. So the size of the drill bit will depend on how big you want the holes. I'm going to do lots of little holes just so they have a lot of ventilation, because it's the extra bit of the oxygen as well which helps break down all the food matter. Now when you are drilling, if you do have a worktop space or anything, make sure you do cover it with a foam pad, and this is a thick Yellow Pages book which I'm never going to use. And there we go. Make sure you get rid of all the filings and you're left with something with holes in it just like this. So let's do the top section. Just want to make sure you've married them up perfectly. on where it kind of grooves in on every single section. I haven't actually drilled there, just because if I am planning on slotting a peg down here in the future, it might just make it a little bit too weak that it might start to split. So there's enough holes around the outside here anyway, which should be awesome enough for the worms. You may be wondering what size drill bit you have to use for the top and for the sides. So it doesn't actually matter what size you use, as long as the inside of the container is the right environment for the worms, they shouldn't try to escape. So you order them online, keep in consideration that they're going to be highly stressed and it will take them a little bit longer to settle into their environment. So I'm going to make a couple of inches of bedding, put the worms on top, leave these worms out on the worktop overnight. Because it will be so bright, it will stop them from wanting to escape, so they'll be wanting to bury down into the bedding. Now in this little bag here, you can see there is some worms in there, and also this is the bedding. Now there isn't much bedding in here, but luckily I have some pre-done compost from my compost bin outside. Now you can pick up some worm bedding wherever you do purchase your worms, so keep that in consideration. And this is already quite damp anyway, so I don't need to add any extra water. So you want to make sure that it's got a bit of a wrung out sponge kind of feeling on there. If it's too dry, it's not an ideal environment for the worms. Carefully place the worms in one section. Now because they don't like the sunlight, what I want to do is keep them in one pile. That's less stress for them then. I'm just going to place them in this corner, just here very gently. And that's it. I'm just going to leave them guys in there. You can already see them starting to move around a little bit. And I will report back again tomorrow when these guys have settled in. So this is the second day of the open topped worm bin. In this spot just here, where my finger is, that's where I place the worms and the bedding, and there's a slight colour variation between the bedding that I lay down with my own compost and the bedding what the worms arrived in. So as you can see, the colours kind of mesh together as they get towards this part just here. So that just is a good indication that the worms have, I'm guessing, called this a home and they've moved around a little bit. We're on to day 2 now of the worm bin. This is settled overnight. I was going through some footage this morning, just watching what I recorded yesterday. The section where I've drilled the holes on the bottom of the container, which you won't be able to see because for some reason it didn't record. When you've drilled your holes around the outside and also on the lid, make sure you drill the holes underneath. That's only if you are using 2 containers. If you're just using the 1 container, don't worry about it, you haven't got to put the extra holes on the bottom. So just to highlight, the worms will not leave this container unless something is going wrong inside it. So the pH is wrong, if there's too much moisture, too much dryness, it's too acidic, or whatever it could be, the worms will eventually move away from it. So nothing's escaped. I should have all the worms inside here. If I hold this up here, I can actually see some of the worms underneath, so that's always good. Now I've got some newspaper. So I have seen a lot of videos where people are using grass clippings for the top. It's not a good idea if you've got a small container because grass can get really matted when it's wet. So you're just going to be restricting all the room for the worms to move around in. Just some newspaper on the top. So I'm not going to do a thick layer because there's quite a lot of bedding under here. Because this is really dry, all we're going to do is get some water. Now you can use tap water. I would recommend you use rainwater because it's a free resource, and if you live in Britain it always seems to rain. We go, not too much, otherwise that will compress down. So we're going to add a layer of food and then we're going to add some more newspaper on the top of that. I'm not going to put any more water on it because there should be quite a lot of water inside the fruit and vegetables that I'm going to be putting inside. Remember, if it's too wet, the worms are going to want to leave, and we don't want that to happen. Because they've only got small bellies, I'm just going to chop this up as fine as I can. If you own chickens, you give them a gritty-like substance so that they can digest whatever it is they're eating. And worms are the same, they have very small bodies and they're obviously quite slimy, so they use a gritty substance to help smooth all the enzymes and all the products through their body so they can digest it quicker. The worms will still be able to eat the food without the aid of the gritty substance, but it kind of helps them eat it a little bit quicker. So if you go past a local coffee shop, see if you can ask for them for a cup of coffee grounds. I'm pretty sure you get them for free. Or you can use eggshells, push them up and pop them on top of the food. There's a bit of calcium inside these eggshells, not too much, but a little bit. And also they help balance out the pH as well. So if you have put something in which is quite acidic or very, very alkaline, the pH level of the calcium in the eggshells should help balance that out. After the worms have settled in, you want to be adding food in one place of the container. I've sprinkled it all over just to encourage as much movement throughout this box as possible. But eventually when they start to settle in, just keep it in one section, and what that'll do is that'll encourage movement to one side and to the other side. Here I'm going to do another layer of newspaper, of dry newspaper, and then I'll put lid on and leave that in the cupboard and just check it over the next couple of days. So as it starts to get warmer in our houses at the moment, keep an eye on the water levels. So everything in here should feel a little bit like a wrung out sponge, so it should have a bit of a dampness to it but not too much. Worms are going to be breathing and you will see some condensation around the outside of the container, which is perfectly normal. Just to cover the food that I've just laid down, you can add as much or as less as you want. If you don't have any newspaper at hand but you have lots of compost, that'll serve the same purpose as well. There we go, that is your DIY worm bin sorted. Really easy to make, super cheap as well. If you've got all the materials at home, it should only cost you the price of getting yourself some compost worms. There's very little maintenance towards this, so this will still work in the winter, it'll work in the summer. I'm pretty impressed with that. And I can't wait for it to start giving me some awesome compost and some organic juice. So as I said before, if you want to use additional containers and really stack this up and have, say, 5 or 6 different storage systems, you totally can, that's up to you. Or you can have just the one. Again, the benefit is that I can collect the liquid fertilizer right at the bottom when it falls through. So just for me to do that, I'm just going to take the top lid out and then tip it out as I need it. So have a play around with the containers that you have at home, see what you can reuse before you spend any money and purchase any other materials. Thank you very much for watching, guys. Really love to hear your take on making your own worm bin. I want to know exactly what you've done, if you've done anything different. If you want to follow my journey of my worm bin, I will be posting regular pictures when I get my awesome harvest of compost and liquid fertilizer. You can do that by following me on my Instagram account, which is simply Leafeco. I shall post a link just here. So keep up to date with me, subscribe to this channel, and there'll be so many more DIY videos along the way as well, from a whole venture of eco-friendly styles. So apart from that, I hope you've enjoyed the video and I hope you get some awesome, luscious compost fairly soon as well. Once again, thank you very much for watching and I'll see you in the next video. Take care, bye bye. A container of self-made beetroot lip stain and cheek stain.